Hey, good morning, everybody. I just want to welcome everybody to our Saturday live session. I know that some of you probably have not been here, but I welcome everybody. I joining me here this morning at 9:30. We do this every single Saturday where we either give you some pointers in the real estate and or mortgage um, industry, what's going on, or we go about giving you some sessions or lessons about what we learn. And all we want to do is making sure that all your realtors out there or loan officers out there have the most updated information possible. So I just want to say thank you very much for joining me this morning. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and dive into it. As you can see so far this morning, um, there's a chat box. If you guys can see that, that'd be great. If you can put type of a Y, just to let me know that the chat box is working. So that way, you know, I know for sure that I can see everybody's message. Um, Other than that, we're gonna dive into why. Well, let's give an overview of what happened in the past week. I think I did a video, a recap Friday of yesterday. We posted on YouTube. That's what's going on within the last week. So we know that Fed Chair Jerome Powell and Janet Yellen has spoke to us about how the economy is doing, how about inflations, and what they're planning to do. So far at this point, um, the economy is doing quite well, is recovering, is doing quite well right now. So therefore, the Fed is planning to curve their purchasing of mortgage-backed securities to a lower level than what it is right now. So let's get into what are the reason of today's session is what are the reason why you would not do a 1031 exchange. I know that before, people say, oh, everything is 1031, 1031, 1031. We did a session on M435, which is an installment sales, which is a alternative to a 1031 exchange. But today we're going to give you a reason why people might not choose a 1031 exchange. So let's get into it. If you have any questions, please feel free to type in the chat box, and then that way we can answer them accordingly. Also, I'll repeat the questions so that way everybody on here can see what the questions are, and then that way we get to learn together. Excuse me, guys. All right, let's do this. So, what are a 1031 exchange? There are 7 rules that you need to adhere to qualify for IRS code 1031 or 1031 tax defer. So, first thing first, you have a 45 days to identify replacement properties. So when you sell your property, you have 45 days to identify a replacement property. It has to be closed or exchanged on the new deal within 180 days. So even though you have you have 45 days to establish that a replacement property, but you have up to 180 days to close on that deal. Okay. Number 3, it has to be like kind exchange. So investment for an investment property. So it has to be like kind. Must reinvest, number 4, must reinvest 100% of the proceed from the sales to the new purchase, or you create a boot. I'm going to go into what a boot means in a little bit, but just keep that in mind that you need to reinvest 100% of the proceed from your current sales to the new purchase. So or else you're going to create a boot, which you have to pay capital gain tax on. So we'll go into what a boot means. New purchases must be equal or greater than the property relinquished, meaning whatever you sold, whatever property you sold, let's say $1 million, your new purchase, the exchange has to be $1 million or greater. Okay. Next one is debt must be equal. If your current sale have a loan, then you must use at least the same amount in debt financing to acquire the replacement property. So this is kind of confusing. When I read it, when I teach this too, that a lot of agents say, wait, let's back up. Let's take it one step at a time. So I'm going to dissect this in 2 parts. So number 1, let's say you buy a property or you own a property for that matter, and you're selling that property, right? You're doing a 1031 exchange for that property. Okay. So when you do a 1031 exchange, let's say you owe $500,000 on that property. So now when you buy the new property, let's say you buy it for 1.2 million that you sold for a million, you have $500,000 debt on that property. You're buying a new quote unquote like kind exchange property for 1.2 million. So what do you do as far as debt equals? So that means if you have an existing debt for your current property, investment property of 500,000, you need to borrow on the new property of 500,000 as well. So it's called debt financing. So that means you need to bring in $700,000 because you're buying at 1.2, and then you're gonna borrow 500,000 because that's part of the rules, and then you have to bring in 700,000, so extra 200,000 to buy this property. Okay, you can't just say, okay, well, I'm selling it for a million. I owe 500. I only have 500,000. Then I'm gonna use only 500 to buy the 1.2, and I'm gonna finance 700,000. It doesn't work that way. It has to be debt has to be equal from your relinquished property to the new purchase. So if that makes sense, great. If not, please type in the chat box. Let me know so that way we can go through them one more time. Next one, equity is another requirement that you must meet. For example, you're selling $1,000,000 property and have $500,000 equity. Your replacement is a 1.1. Well, you cannot finance more than 600,000 to have equity of the same amount of your previous. So this is like reverse versus so earlier was debt, now is equity. So it's pretty much the same. It's just that a different way of putting into it. Okay. Options. So do you have options. So 1031 has so many restrictions. Like you saw earlier. So what kind of option do you have? Well, you can do a partial 1031. Well, that's exactly what it means. You can do a partial 1031 exchange, meaning you will create a boot. I'm going to go into it a little bit. You'll see the word boot quite a bit. So you do a partial 1031. You don't have to do 100% 1031 if you don't want to. Okay. So that's your option. Use part of the proceed for reinvestment. So let's say you, the same example, $1,000,000, you still owe 500,000, you have $500,000 in equity. Well, you're gonna finance the new property, but you say, well, I want $100,000 for emergency purposes, so I'm gonna just bring over 400,000. Is that possible? Yes, you can. It's called a partial 1031. You do a partial 1031. You use $400,000, from the proceed. You reinvest that amount. You keep the $100,000, left over, and you pay taxes on that $100,000. You can't find a good replacement property with the same or greater value within a specific period of time laid out by the IRS code. So that's number two. You have an option where you can do a installment sale like an M453, like we spoke about last week, where within a specific time period you need to remember the IRS code is very specific on the 1031 exchange. You need to find a replacement property within 45 days and close that property or close that transaction within 180 days. What if you cannot find a replacement property? When I say replacement, meaning you can't find the same property that give you the same good cap rate, right? Because that's what investors do, right? When they sell or relinquish a investment property, they want to find a replacement property with the same amount of net income or higher, right? You don't want to sell something that, let's say you're making a certain amount of money and then you buy another one and you make less money. It doesn't make sense as far as investment is concerned. Now, unless you buy the property for very, very low price, but even when you do that, again, there's two. Remember, you have other restriction on a 1031 that you need to adhere to, that you have to qualify to make sure that you don't create a quote unquote boot. That way you have to pay property capital gain taxes on. Okay, number three, eliminate leverage and debt service completely. For example, you owe only 100,000 left on your $1,000,000 property, which you are relinquishing. You buy a good $900,000 investment property. So that means you have 900,000. You sold it for a million. You have $100,000 debt on that property, right? So you take $900,000 in your equity and you buy an investment property free and clear, right? So that means you don't have to worry about you know um, paying mortgages or anything like that. You own the property free and clear. So what happened to that $100,000, right? Well, you need to pay taxes on that $100,000 remaining, which create a boot. Okay, so that's just want to let you know. So Again, those are your options. What is a boot? So I'm like I promise you, what is a boot? What is a boot? A boot is basically created when a property being sold has a proceed that's more than the replacement property being acquired. Okay, so that means you sold a property for $1 million, you buy a property for $900,000, you have $100,000 excess, so you're only using $900,000 to buy that property, so therefore it create a boot, which is $100,000 capital gain tax, which you have to pay on because you're buying the replacement less than what you sold your investment property for. Okay. What create a boot? Accidental creating a boot. You have two types. A cash boot. A cash boot is created when you bought a replacement property using less than your available proceed from your sales, which will trigger a capital gain tax on the leftover portion or boot. I just mentioned that earlier. You sold for $1 million. You buy a property, replacement property for 900. You have $100,000 extra or excess. You will create an accidental cash boot, which you will have to pay capital gain tax on. Okay. The next one, remember, the 1031 has a very strict guideline as far as debt is concerned. Accidentally creating a boot called a mortgage boot, right? This is created when your debt or newly acquired replacement property is less than the debt of your property being sold. Remember, we give you an example where you have $500,000 left on your current property that you're sold, right? You do an exchange on. Well, when you buy a new property, you basically say, well, I don't want to owe 500, I want to owe only 400. So you take the proceeds, you dump it over the other side. Now you're borrowing less money, $100,000 less. Well, with that $100,000 less, it create an accidental mortgage boot, which you have to pay capital gain tax on. Okay, so again, so these are stuff that not many people tell you about as far as boot is concerned. The IRS 1031 is very specific. So number one, you have to find like kind replacement property within 45 days. Number two, you have to close on that property within 180 days. Number three, you try to avoid a equity and or debt boot, okay, on this replacement property, or else you will pay capital gain taxes on, okay? So what are the main reason why you do not want to do a 1031 exchange? That's what we're here about. So I'm going to list out some of the reason. Number one, you don't mind paying the taxes, obviously, right? So you're saying, well, I don't mind paying the capital gain taxes, so you don't need to do a 1031 exchange. You sell the property, you pay the capital gain tax on whatever you earn, and then you take all the cash that's left over, you do whatever you want with it. So you're paying the capital gain tax and you don't mind doing so. So that's the reason number one. The most obvious reason, of course, right? Number two, you haven't found the right property, right? So within that 45-day window, you can't find a replacement property. So what do? Right? Well, then you pay the capital gain tax and you move on. Right. Number three, you want to reduce exposure to real estate. And this is very hard to comprehend for a lot of people. It's like, as an investor, you already bought property. Why would you want to reduce your exposure? Right. So there's a lot of reason. So number one, not all real estate investment is a good investment. Okay. And I'm telling you through 20 years plus experience as a real estate broker here is that, not every real estate purchase is a good real estate investment. Everybody tells me, I have a lot of agents come up and tell me, hey, Michael, man, real estate is the best investment ever. I'm like, not really. Right. So you just imagine this, right? Everybody say, wow, the property gone up so high, multiple offers, you double your money, et cetera, and et cetera, and et cetera, right? Well, I can tell you a lot of you out there who listen to this, who knows what I do on every single day as stock trader or day trader, every single morning, if you spend, okay, let's say you want to buy a property for, I don't know, right now in Santa Clara County, average $1 million, you put 20%, that's $200,000. Right, not including all your property tax you have to pay, insurance, and also monthly mortgage that you have to pay, right? So just imagine all that money that goes in, and let's say if I go and put that into an investment, a stock investment or a market investment, equity investment, a I would like to say fairly non high risk investment has a X amount of returns, between, X amount percentage and so on and so forth. Well, think about it. I would make a lot more money than your real estate investment where I have to fork up $200,000 plus every single month mortgage payment, plus, property tax twice a year, plus, insurance, plus, all the fixtures and, upkeep of the property and things like that. So there are other ways to invest your money instead of just real estate. But of course, most people come here to say, oh, well, I want to know what the real estate market's going to do because I want to invest into a real estate. I tell all my customer this: when you buy real estate, if you buy the property because you want to live in it, then it doesn't matter which time you buy the property because you're going to live in it. But if you're going to buy to invest in the property, try to find out exactly how much exposure you have, when you're going to buy it. Also, what are your options are as far as investing your money instead of going straight into real estate. Okay. So again, I've been doing it for quite some time. I see people lose money in real estate. I see people gain money on real estate. Same thing as equity in the stock market. So either way, there are risks involved. So some people who doesn't want to expose themselves into the real estate market, then they don't mind paying the capital gain tax and reduce the exposure in that sense. Okay. Number four, you want to simplify your lifestyle, right? Simply say, hey, you know what? I don't want to deal with all the tenant headache. I don't want to deal with non-payment. I don't want to deal with, check bouncing. I don't want to deal with, upkeep of the property. I don't want to, have to call a plumber at 2 a.m. in the morning where they have no hot water. My tenant is, screaming at me, or lawsuits about, all kind of stuff. So, they just want they want a simple lifestyle. So when they do that, guess what? They're gonna liquidate their real estate. They probably keep one property for themselves, so that way they can always come home or call that their house or their home. So they want to just keep one, and they're going to relinquish everything and just pay the capital gain and get all the cash and retire. So that's how some people would like to simplify their lifestyle. So that's number four. Number five, you live in the rental for at least 2 of the past 5 years to take advantage of the tax-free profit of 250,000 for single and 500,000 for married couple as your profit. So that's another reason you don't want to do a capital 1031 exchange. Why? So let's just say, I'm going to give you a quick example. I live in a rental property which I file taxes on, right? 2 years within the last five. Okay, so that's the rule. If you live in a property and you file taxes, that's your primary resident. 2 years of the past 5 years, you can take advantage of the tax-free gain or profit. If you're single, 250,000 or 500,000 for a married couple. And how does that work? Well, I'm going to give you a quick example here. For instance, I'm going to buy a property. I have a property that is $1 million, and I bought that property 5 years ago for $500,000, right? So let's say if you're single, you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna sell for $1 million. I bought it for 500,000, but then when I bought that 500,000, when I bought the property, it was, torn down. It was really bad shape, right? So I had to spend $250,000, paid receipt, contract and everything, to fix the property so I can live in it for the next couple years. Well, guess what? I live in it for 2 years out of the five. Now I decide to sell that property, right? So when I sold the property, I decide to, retrofit or do some rehab to the property to make it presentable, because I've been living it for quite some time. And, I feel that maybe we can, get a little bit more money by, fixing the kitchen, bathroom, et cetera, redo the house, etc. So now all of a sudden I had to spend another, I don't know, like another, um, let's just say $200,000. Well, when I sell the property and I use $200,000 to upkeep, to rehab, that is part of my cost. So now I can technically take $250,000 net profit tax free if you're single, and 500,000 for a married couple, and then you don't have to pay taxes. So therefore, you don't need to do a 1031. Now I want to backtrack. I think I caught myself. You bought a property 500,000. You live in it for a couple years before you sell the property. You put out $250,000 to, retrofit the property. So now you're all in at 750,000. You sold for $1 million, and you're single. You profit 250,000, right? Again, remember, like you pay the realtors X amount of fees and all that. That's kind of deduct that too. So let's just say, make the math easy. You profit 250,000. If you're single, guess what? You don't need to do a 1031. The law allows you to take the tax-free profit of 250,000 for single and 500,000 for married couple when you sell property. So as long as you live in it 2 out of the last 5 years. Okay. The last one, which I did last week, was we call it installment sale M453, a tax deferred for 30 years. So this is another option for you not need to do a 1031 exchange. You can do an installment sale. You still get the cash to do whatever you want, right? And you can buy a bigger home for yourself. You can take a vacation. You can do whatever you want. If some of you haven't seen my installment sale M453, go ahead and check my YouTube videos. We did that already on an installment sale M453. That was last week. We did a Saturday live shows last week for that. So check that video out. It'll tell you everything about installment sales. Again, whatever we said here today is, we're not, we're not tax accountant, we're not CPAs, we're not licensed to do taxes. We're here to give you information. So anything that you or your client want to do, make sure they consult with their attorneys and their tax professionals, okay? Because there's our rules and regulation in there that some tax accountant are not comfortable with, or your attorneys. Talk to them. They know the best. Find a good attorney, find a good tax accountant, so that way you are best served as far as your rights and things like that. Okay. So let me see. Why am I going back to the boots? Okay, guys. So basically, that's it. That's my session. I'd like to, open up right now to see if anybody has any questions that they want to type in on the chat box. I can definitely answer for you. Um, like every single Saturday, what I do is, we try to bring you the utmost information. We do some trainings. This is open to everybody. Have your client, friends, family, join us every single Saturday. They have any questions, they can feel free to type it in the chat box. Of course, they can call in as well. We will answer them live here on the channel. There's a lot of exciting news happening here with us. We hope that you will continue to support us, and of course, the channel, like and subscribe to our channel, so that way when we have something new coming up, you guys will get notification right away. So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of leave the floor for a little bit for you guys to kind of have a chance to type in your questions if you have any. I know there is a little bit of delay, so I'm gonna wait for a little bit to make sure that I don't miss any questions if you guys have any. So other than that, we have another session next, 2 more weeks. We have an agent coming on board with us to do a live show again. She's been in the real estate market here in locally. She's gonna talk about what the real estate market is gonna feel like, or in the next couple months. This is her opinion about it. I've been in the real estate market for 20 plus years, so I'll kind of discuss with her. I'll give you my pointers as well. Um, a lot of agents out there have asked me this question, and they asked me to kind of bring this on today's live show. So I'm gonna go ahead and address that question. So there's a few agents asked me, Mike, what do you think where the interest rate is gonna go within the next couple months or so, right? They want to know, so that way they can prepare their client. Also what you think about the real estate market currently, and from now till the end of the year. Well, I can give you a few um, um, opinions about it. So number one, let's tackle the rates. So mortgage rates are on the rise slightly within the last week. There was a few days that was really good for us. Wednesday and Thursday, we got a few client of ours locked the rate, really favorable. We just did one that investment, 2 units, um, 80% LTV. Um, she got 3.44, no points. So I think it's like a 3.5 APR on that. I mean, very, very investment, of course, 2 units locally. So she's really happy about that because we were tracking that rate for the longest time, and it was hovering about 3.5 and 3.625. So finally, yesterday we were able to get her to a 344, and she's really happy about that. The other thing is, we do have a commercial property that might be off market coming up here in North San Jose. If anybody's interested in that, please let us know. Anybody who has properties that they want to share, please go ahead and type it on the chat box. I will definitely read it out so that way everybody get a chance to check it out. The other question people ask me, so when do you think the rate's going to go, right? So, let's go back to that. Rates are on a rise, and I don't think that, it's going to go any lower. Again, that's speculative. I feel that the bond, the 10-year treasury, should hover between 1.5 and 1.6 for the next, for the next couple months. We close on Friday. I think it's 1.662. So I feel that they're gonna go sideways for quite a bit. But again, you might see one day that goes up really high, and it takes a long time for it to come down. We have a client that's still waiting for the interest rate to be favorable to lock in. So it might happen like that for the next couple months. Real estate market. What do you feel about the real estate market? Well, I can tell you in the local area here in Santa Clara County, our inventory is really low, and that's where they drive the price higher. The problem you're gonna have is seller technically is demanding well, I wouldn't say seller demand, right? Seller don't really know what I know what they know what they want to sell their houses for, but as far as the technical stuff, realtors are the one that's kind of driving this force or this market in a direction that's very, very dangerous. And the reason why, and I'm going to tell you why, and this is controversial. I know there's going to a lot of people going to make comments on this, but I welcome all the comment, good or bad, okay? And this is what it's all about. And it's opinion based. I feel that realtors are steering seller and buyer in the wrong direction. And the reason for that is they just want to get commission, okay? They want to sell the house, and that is true, right? You work hard, you want to get paid, but again, at what cost? And mostly sellers and actually buyers are paying it. Okay, we just got a deal. The property was, I think listed a little bit under $1 million. Offer came in at, I think it's 1.120 or 1.125, something like that. Okay, and then guess what? Well, appraisal came in at, $1,020,000. So now the buyer bought the property $100,000 over, and they have to come in extra $100,000. So I give the same analogies where, would you buy a car for $100,000 when you know that car is only worth, $80,000, right? And who is doing this, right? Who is doing this? So buyer doesn't tell you, hey, Michael, I want to offer $1,125,000. Buyer don't tell you that, right? Buyer's not going to say, okay, you're not buying a car, right? A car buyer can say, okay, well, I can only afford, $80,000. That's what they can afford. But when you're buying a house, it's a little bit different. They ask you as realtors, who's licensed real estate agent, as an expert in your field, what do you think that I need to offer to get this property, right? So I joke around a lot where an agent asks me this, and I tell them, well, every time I have a buyer that asks me this, I say, well, offer $2 million on $1 million house, you get the house. And they're like, what? I say, yeah. You want to get the house? Offer $2 million. But the house is not worth $2 million. Well, okay, so now let's talk about the real numbers, right? So when I put the buyer in that mental state where you do what you need to do to get the property, but then you don't go overboard, right? So what I do is I tell them, okay, look, this is what the property sold within the last 3 months. This is what the property sold within the last month, right? Or this is the property that sold within the last week, right? So we give them data, but I never, ever tell them to put a number, because why? Because when they say, "Oh yeah, Mike told me to buy the property for $1,000,001, and the appraisal came in only $1,000,000," well, I look bad, right? I look bad. Why? Because the house is not worth $1,000,001, right? So keep this in mind, guys. And this is real estate 101. Who dictates the value of the property? The buyers, right? So if the buyer never spoke to me as a realtor, and I never gave them the number of $1.1 million, do you think the buyer will offer that property for $1.1 million? I don't think so, right? Because the buyer is going to look at all the comps. They're going to look at it. And they're going to say, hey, you know what? I think this house is worth $1,000,000. I'm going to offer $1,000,000, right? If they want to go a little bit over, I'm talking about maybe 10, 20,000, 5, 10,000, 20,000, 25 is max, right? If they really like the house, but not $100,000 over. So where did they get that number from? Us, realtors. And I know this is controversial, and I tell everybody this, and I told all the agent this. I say, look, if every time a client asks me this, I tell them $2 million on $1,000,000 house. So I just want to put them in a perspective, so that way they understand that you are the one that's going to pay that house over 30 years, or you pay cash, right? It's up to you. So nobody in this world that I know of, right, in their right mind, pay $100,000 or even $20,000 over than what an item is worth or a house is worth, right? So the appraisal came in low, and now the client's stuck to close the property because guess what? Right now, everybody say, "Oh, when I offer a property, I need no contingency." Mike, can you do that? Well, yeah, we can do the loan. The loans went through no problem. Now I can't close because we can close early, but the seller don't want to close early because they want to. They have to pay the buyer's mortgage on a rent back per day per diem, so per day. So they're like, I don't want to close early. Well, I can close like a week and a half early on a 30-day purchase, a 30-day closing, but they say no. I don't want to close early because I don't want to pay the interest for the new buyer. So I don't want to close early. I want to close on time. I say, okay, well then we'll just hold it and close on time. So the contingency on the mortgage side is not a problem. We never have that problem. The problem here is more like the appraisal. And I tell all the agent this, look, the loan we have no problem with. The appraisal, that's a different story. And I want you to be very clear with your client to make sure they understand because, again, it has nothing to do with me, but, I want to make sure that your client are well aware that when they do an offer with no contingency, that they're on the hook for everything, their deposit, et cetera, and et cetera. So, I feel bad, but again, this is where, that's why I take it to YouTube or, later on in Facebook, is because I want the consumer to be well aware, okay, that, what, you have the power. You're the one that buying the house, okay? Don't listen too much into the realtor numbers, right? Don't, I know it's frustrating when you offer 10 property and you got beaten by 10 property. Trust me when I tell you, I've been doing it for 20 plus years. I have a client I worked with over 2 years before they bought their first home, right? Why? Because we send offers in and they get, beaten. I sent another offer in, they got beaten, right? And then the client was so frustrated. They say, you know what? I'm going to just wait, right? And then later on, we do the same thing and they get beaten. And then finally, we got the home and that they wanted. And not only that, they found a perfect home, right? It took 2 years. I worked with this client for over 2 years to find the perfect home for them. And guess what? They didn't have to pay over, right? They didn't have to pay over. So, and they, and it was a hot seller's market as well. And they didn't have to pay over. But again, everybody's different, right? Realtors, please don't do a disservice to your client, okay? Because guess what? Most of your business is from referral. If you do a disservice to your client, they're not going to refer you customers, right? They're going to tell everybody that, oh, you know what? You're the one that helped them buy that home for $100,000 over the value of the house. Everybody's going to know your name, okay? And like people say, you do 100 good deeds, nobody knows, but if you do one bad one, everybody knows, right? So keep this in mind, guys. I'm not, again, I'm not saying this as a general thing for all realtors. Hey, this is your business. You do however you want. You can be successful. You don't care. That's up to you, right? Me here, I'm telling to the public, right? My community, okay? You guys, okay? If you guys watching this, right? You guys as buyers, you have the power to put in whatever number you feel comfortable in buying the house, putting whatever number you feel that that house is worth to you guys, because you dictate how much that house is worth to you, not the seller, for sure, not the realtors. So it's up to you, buyers. You dictate the property price and you feel comfortable putting in that offer, then put in that number and hopefully you get the property. Okay. But other than that, I welcome everybody. Thank you for joining me. Hopefully everybody gets something out of today's session. Please join me next Saturday, like every other Saturday, like every Saturday, not every other Saturday, every Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on YouTube Live. Where, I think next Saturday, yep. So the following Saturday, we'll probably do it in Vietnamese. So, we do flip back and forth in English and Vietnamese speaking as far as our program is concerned. So, if you'd like to join us or have someone who only speak Vietnamese, please have them join us 2 weeks from today. And then, again, if you subscribe to our channel, we'll put a link in if it's going to be a Vietnamese or it's going to be English. I mean, normally if we put a parentheses Vietnamese, then for sure we're going to speak Vietnamese on that day. So next Saturday, we haven't decided yet if it's going to be Vietnamese or English. I like to kind of do 1 week this, 1 week that. So most likely next week we'll do in Vietnamese, and hopefully we'll reach more client that way so that way our client be more informed. So thank you very much for joining me today, guys. Again, this channel is to inform the community, inform you as agent to become a better agent, to help your client better through knowledge. Again, I believe knowledge is power. Exciting news for Directqm coming up. We post this on Facebook as well. Flat fee is coming into Directqm, guys. Flat fee. So what does that mean? That means you as community, as your client, will pay less money to do a mortgage, so that way they can get better favorable rates. So other than that, well, I thank you, everybody. Be safe, everyone. Still continue to wear your mask, hand sanitizer, wash your hand 6 feet. Okay, guys. So that way we can curb this pandemic so we can get back to normalcy. Okay. Other than that, welcome. Enjoy your Saturday. Enjoy your weekend. It's nice out there. The weather right now in locally in Santa Clara County. I hope everybody enjoy this. Share, like, and subscribe so that way we can bring more content. If you guys have anything that you guys want us to discuss, talk about, or more, there's something flying. I'm sorry, guys. If you guys want to know more about, please let me know. Send me an email, send me a text. That way we can cover that in our next session. Thank you very much.